Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Charts with Dan. Today, we're going to look at the weekend box office where Godzilla vs. Kong continued to dominate. We'll talk about where it stands now, both worldwide and domestically. We're also going to talk about some more release date changes. I know, right? So crazy. Those never happen. A big movie moved out of the summer time frame. Some other movies have been bumped up to fill that gap. So we'll talk about the updated release schedule and all of that. But before we get to that, I do want to mention the passing of somebody who was a very big figure across all different forms of entertainment, and that is Earl Simmons, better known as rapper DMX, who passed away last week. First of all, he was a multi-platinum selling recording artist of albums like It's Dark and Hell is Hot, Flesh of My Flesh, Blood of My Blood, and then there was X, amongst many others. DMX was one of the biggest names in music, not just rap, but music in general for a very long time. He crossed over into being an actor. He was in movies like Cradle to the Grave and Exit Wounds, and then his music has been used memorably, even in recent years in things like Deadpool and one of my favorite scenes ever in Rick and Morty. Yes, he was battling many private demons, and ultimately it seems like that may have been what cut his life tragically short. But let us not forget the great contributions that DMX made to the world of movies, television, music, you name it. Earl Simmons, also known as DMX, rest in peace. So let's turn to the weekend box office, and of course the number one movie was once again Godzilla vs. Kong with $13.3 million. That's a 60% drop-off, not unheard of for a movie that big. It's almost like a microcosm of what the box office would probably do, just at a smaller scale. If none of this had ever happened, I think that Godzilla vs. Kong probably would have opened bigger, but I think we probably would have seen a drop-off about the same, around 60%. We see that very often with a big blockbuster that has a huge opening, and also, keep in mind this is also a movie that people can watch at home on HBO Max. So for it to have all of these mitigating factors and still drop off about the same as your average blockbuster, that's not too bad. At number 2, Nobody moves back up to the number 2 slot in its third week with $2.6 million. Right behind that is The Unholy in its second week. It drops back a spot. Raya and the Last Dragon in its sixth week is still in the top 10 with $2.2 million, despite the fact that it is available for purchase now, in addition to being a Disney Plus Premier Access film. And then at number 5, a new movie called Voyagers with $1.3 million. This is yet another release from Lionsgate. We just saw Chaos Walking have an okay opening, but certainly not good compared to the $100 million that the studio invested in the movie. Now we have another film called Voyagers. Did not have quite as high of a budget, reportedly around $30 million, but another low opening. It seems like Lionsgate may just be dumping some of their movies into the theatrical market now so that they can write off or perhaps lessen the blow of a flop in a case like this. Also, something I've noticed, if you look at this poster, with Chaos Walking, you had half of Tom Holland, half of Daisy Ridley. Here, you're cutting off Ty Sheridan's face. Maybe part of the problem with these Lionsgate films aimed towards young people is that they keep cutting off their stars' faces on the posters. I mean, you pay a lot of money for those faces. Show the whole face. It can't go worse, really, than it's going right now. So with the second week at the top of the domestic box office, let's see where this leaves Godzilla vs. Kong when we look at movies that have been released in the last 365 days, really since theaters shut down just over a year ago. And Godzilla vs. Kong now is officially the highest grossing film for the past 365 calendar days with $70 million approximately. Keep in mind, Warner Brothers does not report exact box office figures. It has supplanted Tenet, that is now down at number 2 with $57.9 million, followed by The Croods, A New Age, Wonder Woman 1984, then Tom and Jerry, Raya and the Last Dragon at number 6, followed by The New Mutants, The War with Grandpa, Unhinged, and Nobody is actually now on this list. So when we look at the top 10 highest grossers for the previous 365 days, we now have 4 films: Nobody, Raya and the Last Dragon, Tom and Jerry, and Godzilla vs. Kong on that list just from this year. And again, even more impressive considering that with the exception of Nobody, the other 3 films have all been available in some form for people to watch at home. So the fear that perhaps people would not want to go back to the movies seems to have been dissipated for now, at least. It does appear that there is going to be at least a chunk of the theatrical market that is ready to return once theaters are back open at full capacity and once there's not an alternative. And that's one thing that I would really be curious about with Godzilla vs. Kong specifically, and that we'll never really know, is How would the movie have done if there were no option to watch it at home, meaning if it had not been available also on HBO Max? Would it have been about the same? Have we maxed out the number of people that would have gone to the theater to see it? Or would we see even bigger numbers because nobody had that home option? We'll never know the answer to that question. There were some reports I was reading in Deadline this week that due to different revenue streams that Godzilla vs. Kong is going to be profitable. Godzilla vs. Kong, I think you could say, is the first unqualified hit of the pandemic era, meaning you don't have to add an asterisk or say, well, when you add this or if this hadn't happened. Godzilla vs. Kong looks like it is the first big success following a year of uncertainty in the theatrical marketplace. Let's look at what it looks like on the 2021 domestic charts. Of course, it is number one with $70 million, followed by Tom and Jerry and Raya and the Last Dragon. There's a pretty big drop off after that. Nobody actually jumps up 3 spots. There were a few films that were all clustered in the same place. Nobody, by virtue of doing pretty well at the box office, is now at number 4 for 2021, followed by The Marksman, The Little Things, which drops down 2 spots, Chaos Walking, which drops down 1 spot. The Unholy enters the chart at number 8, followed by Judas and the Black Messiah and The Courier, and Boogie drops out of the 2021 top 10 domestically. Let's look at the worldwide charts for 2021. Godzilla vs. Kong is not at the top of that chart. That is going to be, and will be for quite some time, Hi Mom at $824.2 million, followed by Detective Chinatown 3. But Godzilla vs. Kong has eclipsed the $350 million mark worldwide, and it is continuing to put up grosses. So like I said, it's not just domestically. We're looking at probably at least a $400 million worldwide gross for Godzilla vs. Kong in the midst of a pandemic. And keep in mind, there are many international markets that aren't open at all. Meaning when you look at Godzilla vs. Kong, and again, we'll never know the answer to this, but if you to put this out in a regular box office climate, if the response were the same, and it's not colored by the fact that some people perhaps are just anxious to get back to the theater, but if the response to the film were the same, you could be looking at a movie that could have done $600, $700, $800 million potentially at the worldwide box office, or more. You never really know. Still, though, considering everything that's going on, I think this is a great result for Warner Media and for Warner Brothers, and probably for HBO Max as well. At number 4 is A Writer's Odyssey. Number 5, Endgame. Number 6, Raya and the Last Dragon. Tom and Jerry at 7. Boonie Bears, The Wildlife at 8. A new Chinese film that just opened up this week, Sister, is now at number 9 on the chart. New Gods, Neja Reborn is at number 10, and that knocks off Evangelion 3.0 plus 1.0, which had just entered the chart a couple weeks ago. That is now out of the top 10, although it could re-enter the chart because it's doing quite well. Theaters are very happy, I'm sure, about the numbers for Godzilla vs. Kong. I'm sure they're going to be even happier as capacity limits go up and more movies start coming out. But they got dealt a bit of a body blow this past week when a big summer movie decided to move out of the summer time frame, and that is Top Gun Maverick, which has been going all over the schedule. It was supposed to come out last summer. It was rescheduled for Christmas and then rescheduled for this summer. It's now moving to November, so that will not be a big summer movie coming out this year, and there were no official reasons given for this moving, at least not from Paramount, but you have to think it's because even though things are trending in the right direction in some markets like the United States, North America, and China, there are many international markets where it is not trending that direction, and Paramount is not really going for that same kind of a hybrid income strategy like you're seeing from Warner Media, where it's like, well, we can make money here and we can make money here. They want people to go to theaters. They did cut the theatrical window in half, so this is a movie that's going to be available on Paramount Plus 45 days after theatrical release, but they're not committed to the same kind of hybrid strategy. They want to get people in theaters first and foremost, so it's not really that surprising that they would move Top Gun out of the summer, considering there's so much instability in so many other markets, and they want every market to be opening at as full a capacity as possible, because this is a big movie. This is a Tom Cruise movie. He is a global movie star. They don't want to put it out in markets where A, the theaters are closed, B, there is no Paramount Plus. They may not see too much benefit. So we have lost a big summer movie, but there are a couple of other ones that have shifted around, moved up to take that spot, take the hole that is left in the July 4th weekend. This movie was slated to come out on July 2nd, so we now had an Independence Day gap. So here is the latest summer release schedule, or select release schedule, moving up through July. We have Mortal Kombat on the 23rd. We mentioned last week that was pushed from the 16th to to the 23rd. So it's not coming out this week. It's coming out next week here in North America. On May 14th, Spiral from the Book of Saw. May 28th still has the dual releases of A Quiet Place Part 2 and Cruella, though Cruella will be on Disney Plus Premiere. June the 4th has The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, available on HBO Max as well. On the 11th, In the Heights, available on HBO Max. So those are all pretty much the same. This is where we've changed a few things. On June 18th, Peter Rabbit 2, The Runaway, which is open in Australia now, but has yet to open in a lot of worldwide markets. That's moved to the 18th. We're going to talk about that movie, and it has hopped all over the release schedule. On the 25th, Fast 9 stays there. That hasn't moved. The Forever Purge from Universal, the latest in the Purge franchise, moved its date once Top Gun Maverick moved off of the July 2nd date. So now the Forever Purge is the biggest major release. It right now kind of has the July 4th weekend to itself. So you could be looking at a big number for that movie, considering, perhaps what the marketplace looks like. So that's one big move, is the Forever Purge up to July 2nd. July 9th still has the premiere of Black Widow, which is available on Disney Plus Premiere. July 16th still has Space Jam: A New Legacy, which is on HBO Max. But this is a move that Paramount did when they moved Top Gun out of the July window. They also moved up from October this fall to this summer now, July 23rd, Snake Eyes, G.I. Joe Origins, the next entry in their G.I. Joe franchise. They're obviously gambling on perhaps the most popular or recognizable character. That is now going to be a summer movie. That's one of the bigger consequences from this move. So we have a brand new movie entering the summer arena at the very end of July, G.I. Joe Snake Eyes Origins. The new Hotel Transylvania movie also moved up to that date. So we have July now being populated, even though we lost probably maybe the biggest movie attraction of that month. We have a few others that are coming in to fill that slot. As always, this is an ever-evolving release schedule. I'm sure there will be different changes and things shuffling and moving around. Top Gun Maverick is a big one. I'm sure a lot of people, myself included, were looking forward to seeing that movie. We're just going to have to wait a little bit longer. Part of it, too, is because they pushed the release of Mission Impossible 7, which was supposed to come out right around the holidays this year, to next year. So Tom Cruise's projects both just kind of bumped down the production schedule. Mission Impossible 7 now coming out in 2022. Peter Rabbit 2, The Runaway was one movie that I mentioned had moved release dates, and this is, I'd have to go back and check. This, I think, is tied or maybe has the most release date changes of any movie in the pandemic. It's been, I think because it's all been pandemic related, we haven't given it the attention of a movie like we gave New Mutants, which kept getting pushed for other reasons. But let's take a look at the history of Peter Rabbit 2. It was one of the first movies, actually, to move off of its date. It was originally scheduled to come out on February 7th of 2020. That was then bumped to April 3rd of 2020. Then everything started going wrong. It was moved to August 7th of last year, then moved to January 15th of this year, then moved back to April 2nd of this year, then they moved it back to June, then they moved it back up to May, then pushed it back to July, and now with Top Gun Maverick gone, it's now moved up 2 more weeks. So we have 9 separate release dates for Peter Rabbit 2, The Runaway. It is currently parked on June 18th, 2021. Who knows if it's going to stick there, but it's been very funny to watch this film, particularly, like I said, because it was one of the first that I remember. We were coming right up on the release, and they're like, nope, we're going to push it, and they kept pushing it. So many movies that have just like, if you're a poster collector, if you like to collect variants of different posters, this is going to be seventh heaven for you for the next few years, because almost every major release has manufactured some kind of marketing materials with the wrong dates. I was just looking at the stuff for Top Gun Maverick. There's one that says 2020. There's one that says June 2020. They're all wrong. So this is a great time for collectors because you're going to be tracking down a lot of these rarities for quite some time. Let's take a look back when the box office was a little more stable and do our box office flashback for this week. And we are looking back at 1995, this week in 1995. And there's sometimes when you look at a box office, it just encapsulates a decade. There's a few of these we've talked about before. Look at this weekend in 1995, April 14th through the 16th. At number 1, you had the second week of Bad Boys 2. At that time, I would say Martin Lawrence was the bigger star, even though Will Smith, I think, was perhaps the breakout movie star of the 1990s. At number 2 was Rob Roy in its second week as well. So you had Bad Boys, big action comedy. You had the period drama with Liam Neeson. Then in its second week, what a big release week the week before, a Goofy movie in week 2. So a huge movie that many of my peers have great affection for. I think it's fine. I just didn't see it when I was a kid. So I'm not one of those that worships at the altar of a Goofy movie. Then at number 4, that that same week, a new Pauly Shore movie. Now, this is not necessarily peak Pauly Shore, but we're in the neighborhood. At number 4 with $4.8 million. And at number 5, my favorite, personal favorite, Chris Farley movie, Tommy Boy, in its third week at $4.2 million. So that is just a great slice of the 90s right there. Bad Boys, Rob Roy, a Goofy movie, Jury Duty, and Tommy Boy. Sometimes the stars align and you just get some of these movies that have lingered for many, many years all coming out at the same time. The 15th week of the year back in 1995 was one of those times. Let's look at some other notable moments, and these aren't exactly, well, these are classics, but for a different reason, most of them. In 1952, Singin' in the Rain debuted, one of my favorite musicals, I think perhaps the best Hollywood musical of all time. In 1957, one of my favorite movies ever made, Sidney Lumet's 12 Angry Men. If you have not seen this movie, it is fantastic. That also opened. In 1988, My Neighbor Totoro hit theaters in Japan. It wouldn't make its way here until much later, and it actually came out the same week as another Studio Ghibli film, A Grave of the Fireflies. It was a double bill in 1988. So two big key landmark animated films, both opening the same weekend in 1988. And then, it's hard to believe, but 4 years ago, it's been 4 years since we saw Our Family. We had the spinoff, but this was the family movie. 2017, The Fate of the Furious opened to $98 million domestically. Of course, that was famously a movie that did pretty well here in the United States, but did over $1 billion worldwide. It was really the turning point. It had been trending that way for a while, but the major turning point for the Fate of the Fast and the Furious franchise to be a global franchise, global first, really, rather than a domestic franchise. And as always, before we leave, let's take a look at the streaming charts. This is what people are watching at home through various streaming services. And we will start with Amazon at number 1. Not a whole lot of changeover on this chart. Chaos Walking, the premium video on demand. People may not have seen it in theaters, but people are watching it on Amazon. At number 2, Raya and the Last Dragon, which is currently only available for purchase. It's a $30 purchase. At number 3, Minari, as we head closer and closer to the Academy Awards. The premium video on demand of Minari is at number 3. The Rental of Promising Young Woman, which is another Oscar nominee for Best Picture, is at number 4, followed by The Rental of News of the World. Judas and the Black Messiah, a Best Picture nominee, the premium video on demand version at number 6. The Father, another Best Picture nominee, at number 7 for its PVOD. People are renting The Croods, A New Age. It's going to be on a chart. It has been for months now, and there's no sign of it stopping there. The Mauritanian, available on premium video on demand. And then Robin Wright's directorial debut, Land, also, I believe, re-entering the chart. So PVOD is having a great renaissance, meaning, you know, the movies that you rent for like $20 or so, the premium rentals. People really catching on to this, and it could be a great revenue stream for movies like Land and The Father. I would be curious to know how much money they're bringing in, because I'm guessing they're probably getting more from that than they would be in another situation. It could be that that's a different road to profitability for these kinds of films, and this is where I think you should have some adjustment in the theatrical market and perhaps learn a few things. These smaller movies that may not have been accessible to people anyway with the traditional theatrical window, perhaps you can work something out to make those movies more accessible. I'm not an absolutist, but I think you should have the options available where it makes sense. Let's look at what people are watching through iTunes. At number 1 is City of Lies, which has had a very long road to the big screen. This was made back in, or supposed to be released back in 2018. It's a movie about the investigation of the Tupac Shakur and Notorious B.I.G. murders. It has Johnny Depp and Forrest Whitaker. We talked about the company that originally had this, which is Global Road, and in a previous charting episode, I'm not sure exactly when, it was quite some time ago, but this movie was basically caught in the middle of a bankruptcy, and principal photography on this movie wrapped almost 4 years ago. And this is what happens with films sometimes when they're caught in these situations, these bankruptcy situations, not having rights, not having distribution. They can sit on the shelf for years, even though it's a movie about a very interesting topic. It's got big stars in it, and yet it sits on a shelf for years. It's now available to watch, and that is the number 1 film over on iTunes. At number 2 is Promising Young Woman. At number 3, Wonder Woman 1984. At number 4, Synchronic, which is probably up on the chart chart because it's available as a 99-cent rental. That's one of the pandemic movies that came out that a lot of people were talking about. Raya and the Last Dragon, as I mentioned, available for purchase for $30. That's there at number 5. News of the World is at number 6. Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar, which was available previously as a premium video on demand title, is now available to buy or rent, so it re-enters the chart at number 7. The Vault is at number 8. Central Intelligence at number 9. I guess some people want to laugh. And The Illusionist, which is the magician movie that was not The Prestige, is at number 10. So I guess you got some Ed Norton fans that are coming in for their fix this week. Let's wrap this up by checking out what people are watching on Netflix, at least here in North America. And let's look at the service as a whole. At number 1 is the Netflix original movie Thunder Force, starring Octavia Spencer and Melissa McCarthy. At number 2, a Netflix series. This is a robbery about an art heist. At number 3, another Netflix original series, Who Killed Sarah? The Little Rascals, the 1990s movie, is at number 4, followed by the Netflix original series The Serpent. What Lies Below is at number 6. It is not What Lies Beneath. It has a similar title, but not the same movie. Coco Melon, a fixture recently in recent weeks in the top 10. At number 8, the Netflix original movie Concrete Cowboy, followed by Legally Blonde and Sniper Ghost Shooter. So a lot of movies in the Netflix overall top 10, which means we're going to see some repeats when we look at just the movies that people are watching on the streaming service here in North America. Thunder Force there at number 1, followed by The Little Rascals, What Lies Below, Concrete Cowboy, Legally Blonde, and Sniper Ghost Shooter. Then a new Netflix original film, Two Distant Strangers, followed by Saving Private Ryan, Friends with Benefits, and Accepted, which is a new entry to the Netflix movie chart. And that pretty much wraps up this edition of Charts with Dan. Next week, believe it or not, is going to be our 1-year anniversary of doing the show on this channel. It will be our 52nd week of Charts with Dan since I have branched out on YouTube. As a matter of fact, next week, the 20th of April, is the 1-year anniversary of launching this channel. So if you have ideas for what you'd like to do or charts you'd like to see, something to commemorate the first anniversary of doing the show here on the channel, please let me know down below in the comments. Give me a few days. I'll try to crunch some numbers, just, some kind of celebration. It's been a very odd first year, not the first year I would have planned out for myself, and yet here we are, and it feels like we're still, ramping up into something fun and something cool. I mean, it's been fun and cool what we've done before, but it does feel like this has kind of been a bit of a prelude, maybe practice a little bit, or, improvisation definitely, but we are now ramping up into not only what this show is going to be, but I think what the channel is going to be. So thank you to everyone who's been here since the beginning. Please don't forget to check me out on Patreon at patreon.com/Dan Murrell. There's a lot of fun stuff, and I've actually made some adjustments to my tiers. So the $5 tier, which is my lowest price tier, you now get a monthly movie commentary. You get an exclusive show called Dan Decides. We're actually leaving it up to patrons to help me figure out which movies to put into an Oscar Best Picture bracket. So you still have time to go and do that. So go check out the Patreon if you'd like, patreon.com/Dan Murrell. See if there's something there that you'd like to do. We've also got Movie Club going on, all kinds of great stuff, Schmodown study sessions. And please don't forget to check out my podcast, All My Movies, which has moved to this channel. You're going to see the newest episode here this week, and we are talking about The Godfather, one of the best movies ever made. I'm excited to break that down here on the channel. Also stay tuned for news, reviews. A lot of people have asked me about The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I am watching. I think it's getting really, really good. And I made the decision after the second or third episode to really just kind of sit on everything because it feels like a very kind of movie in chapters, a little bit different than WandaVision felt. I'm going to do a big wrap-up review at the end of the show in a couple weeks. So stay tuned for that in a couple weeks, as well as reviews of the latest movies. And we've got some Oscar stuff coming up that I'm excited to announce and talk about. Lots of stuff going on. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time. Stay safe out there. Bye.